So send me a master craftsman who can work with gold, silver, bronze, and iron, as well as with purple, scarlet, and blue cloth. He must be a skilled engraver who can work with the craftsmen of Judah and Jerusalem, who were selected by my father David. I am sending you a master craftsman named Hiram Abi, who is extremely talented. His mother is from the tribe of Dan in Israel, and his father is from Tyre. He is skillful at making things from gold, silver, bronze, and iron, and he also works with stone and wood. He can work with purple, blue, and scarlet cloth and fine linen. He is also an engraver and can follow any design given to him. He will work with your craftsmen and those appointed by my lord David, your father. Hiram's almost like, hey, you know what? I got the guy you're looking for, maybe even better. Because he can do these other things too. What's up, cool people? My name's Matt. Welcome back to our Bible study. Okay, 2 Chronicles chapter 2. Last chapter was pretty much David going to Gibeon to make offerings at the bronze altar that was at the tabernacle, since the temple hadn't been built yet, seeking God's favor, God's wisdom, especially his wisdom, because God even comes to him in a dream that night, or a vision, or something like that, asks Solomon what he wants, and Solomon asks for wisdom. So God's like, okay, good answer, I'm going to give you a bunch of other stuff too. So Solomon becomes wealthy and powerful and famous. Eventually. Not necessarily right then, but God has promised to give him those things. And then you get an example at the end of that chapter of some of his power and wealth by just noting how plentiful gold and silver were, how many chariots and horses and things like that he was able to get to add to the power of Israel. But after the time in Gibeon, Solomon returns to Jerusalem to, take a seat on the throne and rule the kingdom. And then we get to chapter 2 here. So here we go. There's a note here right off the bat. Verse 2:1 is numbered 118 in the Hebrew text. So this would have actually been at the end of the previous chapter. But my guess is it makes more sense here. Well, we can read this and then you can form your own opinions of whether it belongs in this chapter or the previous one better. But anyway, okay, here we go. Solomon decided to build a temple to honor the name of the Lord, and also a royal palace for himself. He enlisted a force of 70,000 laborers, 80,000 men to quarry stone in the hill country, and 3,600 foremen. Solomon also sent this message to King Hiram at Tyre. Send me cedar logs as you did for my father David when he was building his palace. I am about to build a temple to honor the name of the Lord my God. It will be a place set apart to burn fragrant incense before him, to display the special sacrificial bread, and to sacrifice burnt offerings each morning and evening, on the Sabbaths, at new moon celebrations, and at the other appointed festivals of the Lord our God. He has commanded Israel to do these things forever. Okay, pausing there for a sec. The note is... The message is a bit long, so I'll probably be breaking it up into a couple of pieces. Okay, so, yeah. Solomon's looking to build a temple. I love how it specifies that Solomon decided to build a temple. As if there hadn't been a bunch of hype around this. I mean, technically he could have decided not to do it. You don't have to necessarily do what your father or the previous king says. But, I mean, come on. Seems like a bit of a foregone conclusion, in my opinion. But still. I guess maybe the word decided here is more like okay. Then after this, Solomon was like actually ready to start doing this thing. So he gets all these laborers. Now, these are clearly not, like, these laborers are clearly for something specific beyond, quarrying stone in the hill country and that kind of stuff, because the quarrymen outnumber the laborers. So the laborers might have been more specifically for, like, actually putting the stuff in place and doing the actual building part. Whereas the whole quarrying stone was just, like, getting the blocks from whatever piece of rock they were chipping it out of. And then transporting all that. And then, of course, the foremen kind of supervise everything. Oh, yeah. So then, note there just mentions, because of verse 1 being at the end of the previous chapter in the Hebrew text, the rest of this chapter is verses 1 through 17 in the Hebrew text. So then we get to Solomon's message to the king of Tyre. Now, Hebrew says Hiram rather than Hiram. Still, pretty close. Considered a variant spelling. It's only one letter off, and ancient Hebrew was a very different language. So he's asking this king for cedar to build the temple, essentially. And then he states the intended use of this temple, maybe in part to be like, alright, I'm not building something that's going to be a threat to you. This is for our God, for making offerings and things like that. And then, continuing this address to King Hiram, we go on in verse 5. This must be a magnificent temple, because our God is greater than all other gods. But who can really build him a worthy home? Not even the highest heavens can contain him. So who am I to consider building a temple for him, except as a place to burn sacrifices to him? So send me a master craftsman who can work with gold, silver, bronze, and iron, as well as with purple, scarlet, and blue cloth. He must be a skilled engraver who can work with the craftsmen of Judah and Jerusalem, who were selected by my father David. Also send me cedar, cypress, and red sandalwood logs from Lebanon, for I know that your men are without equal at cutting timber in Lebanon. I will send my men to help them. An immense amount of timber will be needed, for the temple I am going to build will be very large and magnificent. In payment for your woodcutters, I will send 100,000 bushels of crushed wheat, 100,000 bushels of barley, 110,000 gallons of wine, and 110,000 gallons of olive oil. And thus ends Solomon's address to King Hiram. So, I guess if this part here in verse 5 describing the temple, it's like, look, we need this thing to be like the best thing ever. Period. And even at that, it's still gonna pale in comparison to the majesty of our God. But, like, point is, we want to make it the best we can. So we're gonna need a lot of wood here. Plenty of. Now the initial mention was cedar logs, but then later on it mentions cedar, cypress, and red sandalwood. Some of that might have been for more specific purposes, like certain pieces of the construction, or certain things that were being built that were... Anyway. Tangent / digressing. So yeah. He's reaching out to King Hiram because he's like, alright, I know your guys are the best at getting wood especially from Lebanon. I'm going to send my men to go help, but your guys are going to be running that whole operation because you all know how it works and what's the best way to do it. And he also asks for, it says a master craftsman who could do all these different things, working with gold, silver, bronze, iron, although that's all metalworking in general, so those are kind of more directly related. Working with the different kinds of cloth, a bit of a break off from that. Also a skilled engraver. Now, the way it's worded makes it sound like this is all one person who's good at all these things. Which, I'm not saying that's impossible. It's just... Seems like a very specific kind of person that Solomon's asking for here. Now, so back when the tabernacle was being built and all the instruments therein, if I recall correctly, Moses had a similarly skilled person kind of like heading up, overseeing, giving direction on the entire operation of building the tabernacle and the furniture and instruments therein. So maybe that is part of the reason Solomon wants like one guy who knows it all to kind of oversee all of this stuff. Because then you can have one consistent vision throughout all of it. Or at least it's a lot easier to then have one consistent vision throughout. Note there it's cedar, cypress, and red sandalwood. Specifically related to the red sandalwood, I guess it could be read as juniper. Hebrew reads algum, perhaps a variant spelling of almug. So that could also be found in 2 Chronicles 9, 10, and 11, and 1 Kings 10, 11 through 12. But in any case, same kind of wood being mentioned there. And I assume, like, all of, like, the red sandalwood and juniper and all that, like, that's all similar to each other at least. If not, maybe even different names for the same kind of wood. And then Solomon caps it off by saying, alright, as payment for these things I'm asking of you, I'm going to give you 100,000 bushels of wheat and barley and 110,000 gallons of wine and olive oil. I mean, those were all very common things, presumably, but also, like, very significantly used in their time and culture. Hebrew says 20,000 cores of crushed wheat and barley, which is believed to be about 4,400 kiloliters. Yeah, bushels doesn't really describe the measurement too accurately for most people. Kiloliters, though, like, most of us know what a liter or two of soda looks like. So, especially take the 2-liter bottle. Now get 2,200 of those. That's how much of wheat and barley were given. And then 110,000 gallons. I mean, that's, especially for Americans at least, that's a pretty common measurement. The Hebrew says 20,000 baths, which is also believed to be 420 kiloliters. Now, I guess liters is technically volume, not like mass. So, of course, the dry stuff is going to take up more volume because it's dry and it's less dense. Anyway, whatever. But point is, just a big lump, or maybe not all in one lump, maybe over the course of time, I don't know. But it's like, all right, I know I'm asking a lot of you, so I'm going to give you a lot of this stuff in exchange. All right, on to verse 11 then. King Hiram sent this letter of reply to Solomon. It is because the Lord loves his people that he has made you their king. Praise the Lord, the God of Israel, who made the heavens and the earth. He has given King David a wise son, gifted with skill and understanding, who will build a temple for the Lord and a royal palace for himself. I am sending you a master craftsman named Hiram Abi, who is extremely talented. His mother is from the tribe of Dan in Israel, and his father is from Tyre. He is skillful at making things from gold, silver, bronze, and iron, and he also works with stone and wood. He can work with purple, blue, and scarlet cloth and fine linen. He is also an engraver and can follow any design given to him. He will work with your craftsmen and those appointed by my lord David, your father. Send along the wheat, barley, olive oil, and wine that my lord has mentioned. We will cut whatever timber you need from the Lebanon mountains, and will float the logs in rafts down the coast of the Mediterranean Sea to Joppa. From there you can transport the logs up to Jerusalem. Solomon took a census of all foreigners in the land of Israel, like the census his father had taken, and he counted 153,600. He assigned 70,000 of them as common laborers, 80,000 as quarry workers in the hill country, and 3,600 as foremen. Okay, I'll get to that in a sec. One thing I realized as I was mentioning, one thing I realized as I was reading this, really these verses collectively, but especially right here, where Hiram mentions his father David, like, that relationship had already been established between David and Hiram. It even said early on in Solomon's address that he's asking for cedar logs as you did for my father David. So it's like this was already something that had happened previously with David as king. So Solomon's not asking something like too off the wall given their history. So Hiram's like, kind of in a way saying, hey, congrats on being named king. And it looks like, your kingdom is set up well with you as ruler. Then he describes the master craftsman who fits the description of everything Solomon was asking for. The one who could work with the silver, the gold, iron, bronze. I don't think Solomon even mentioned being good with stone and wood, but turns out this guy can do that too. Yeah, no, this just says gold, silver, bronze, iron, and the cloths. And being an engraver. Nothing mentioned of the stone and wood. So, Hiram's almost like, hey, you know what? I got the guy you're looking for, maybe even better. Because he can do these other things too. But this is your guy. This is the guy that you want. Trust me. And verse 15 is pretty much just like, all right, I accept your offer of payment. And then he explains how they're going to get the wood from the Lebanon mountains to Jerusalem. They're going to cut it, send it down the Mediterranean Sea to Joppa, and then it can be transported from there to Jerusalem. Note there at Mediterranean Sea, it just says the sea, but I mean, that was like the main sea there, the big sea, as opposed to, the Red Sea, which was also nearby, but smaller and further south. And then this whole census thing, now it's like, hang on a sec, didn't God dislike the whole taking a census thing when David did it? Two notes on that. One, this seems to be just a census of the foreigners in the land, not necessarily everybody. And I think the thing related to taking a census that had been mentioned before, saying God doesn't like that, was a census of his chosen people. So maybe this doesn't fit that criteria. I don't know. But also, there was also supposed to be like some sort of offering given or something in connection with any census being taken that, if I remember right, wasn't done with David's census that maybe was done here. I don't know. In any case, there are some potential reasons why this doesn't necessarily get punished by God, even though the previous census by David did. And so apparently, looking at these numbers, they match exactly the numbers that are up here in verse 2. So those were all foreigners being enlisted to do all this work. Which, I mean, I could understand. I'm not saying it's right, but I mean, you gotta have somebody do the work. And I'm not quite sure what the relation was there or why it seems like it would have been foreigners almost exclusively that were assigned to do this work. I mean, look, having foreigners do common menial tasks isn't something new within society. It has happened all throughout history, continues to happen, really. And in some cases, if it's done, I'm going to air quote, right, like, it's giving them the cheap labor that nobody else really wants to do, but is still, respectable work. And as long as you compensate them for it, then that doesn't mean there's anything necessarily wrong with that. But anyway, okay. So those were all different preparations for building the temple and how it was going to happen. And that's all I got for 2 Chronicles chapter 2. Okay, so, a reminder of the agreement really is what this chapter was between, Solomon and King Hiram. And it was really all a matter of getting the necessary materials, which they somehow still didn't have enough of, to build the temple. Although they might have gotten most of the gold and silver and things like that was necessary. I don't recall there being mention of, wood as a thing that was gifted by David or the leaders back in First Chronicles. So maybe that still needed to be figured out. And the stone, apparently. But that is clearly being addressed by Solomon here. And I'm sure we'll get more of him in the temple building in upcoming chapters. So, as always, like and share if you enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the bell to get updates when I post new videos. That way you won't miss out on future chapters of Bible study or any of the gaming videos that I release if you're interested in that stuff too. But make sure you look down in the description as well for links to social media pages that'll give you other ways to keep up with what I'm doing. And I've also got a Discord server link down there and a supporter page where you can help contribute to what I'm doing here and sign up for a monthly membership that'll give you some little perks in exchange. But down below the description in the video and all that, you can leave your thoughts and questions in the comment section with whatever you got for me, especially if it's Bible related. But yeah, that's all I got for now. Hope you're all doing well. Hopefully I'll see you soon for another video. But whatever the case is, till next time, stay cool, people.